And for more on developments surrounding the U.S. military buildup around Iran, we have with us Ambassador Anil Kumar Trigunayat, a former senior diplomat, joining us with his perspective. Thanks for being with us, Ambassador Trigunayat. Now, how does the U.S. deployment of naval and air assets alter Iran's military deterrence posture? And what signals also does it send to the region?
Well, I think that President Trump, in the beginning, backed out a little bit because his generals told him that at that particular moment they did not have adequate assets. It was also reported that Israeli Prime Minister also asked President Trump to delay any further action. Now it appears that the several important assets, both from the British as well as the American forces, have been deployed also in Al Udeid base, which was at one time vacated. And also in the vicinity, we are seeking these aircraft carriers coming in, at least two of them, and several other strike forces. The statement from the United States with regard to the impending military action has yet to be coming in.
Yes.
But what we are listening is from the Israeli sources, they are claiming that perhaps tonight or day after, they are going to have one of the worst and the quickest attacks. And that's what
Okay.
is being said from Israel.
Yes.
But let us hope that for the sake of
Right.
sanity and for stability that we don't see this military action.
Indeed. And how does the unrest within Iran weaken its position or even embolden its position in a potential response to the United States' buildup? Because the U.S. is looking at this as a human rights issue. President Trump said that he was able to stop some 800 plus executions.
Well, I mean, there is definitely a major problem within Iran. There is no doubt about it. There is economic problem, which has called a distress and a stress in the society. And this is also a fact that a lot of protesters indulged in vandalism, and that eventually, and of course, arson and all, which eventually led to a lot of deaths in the 3,000 plus 600 or 500 soldiers also killed. So I think that this was one of the worst crises that Iranian government is facing in 47 years. But these kind of economic crises not easy to handle because they are also directly related to the sanctions, crippling sanctions that have been imposed for quite many years now by the West themselves. So they expect that this particular anger of the people will materialize into an anger against the regime, which will help destabilize or exit of this current regime. Now, of course, if, for example, the United States attacks Iran, that is not something that is going to automatically remove the regime from there. The regime is fully supported by the military, by the IRGC, and by the Basij police. There are some reports which indicate that there are some researchers taking place. There is some kind of corruption, but that could also be a part of the disinformation campaign. But at the same time, it is true that situation is very, very delicate. And the only hope is that we would not see the military action, because if that spirals out of control, it will be disastrous for the region, for the world, and for it.
And now, will the U.S. allies want to reduce tensions? I mean, the U.S. allies themselves now are having some problems with the U.S. But will NATO get involved, for instance? We heard that the German leader just recently, he said that, Friedrich Merz, he said that, it's the last days of the Iranian regime.
Well, I mean, this is also a disinformation campaign. I mean, this is, you put pressure on the regime trying to embolden the protesters, essentially. I mean, but there is going to be more mess and mayhem, as we have seen in different parts. And I don't think the Iranians are looking for it. An average Iranian, and if there is an attack, I can tell you that very likely there will be a greater support for the regime to tide over the immediate crisis and then remove them eventually. It'll also depend how the regime is going to behave eventually. That's very important. Because if they are going to use these kind of hard-headed tactics and force against the people while not addressing the core
Okay,
issues of economic
right.
distress, I think they're going to have major problems.
Uh, Ambassador Trigunayat, also the U.S. has started with a very aggressive posture now, we are seeing. And at the same time, the U.S. President has introduced this Board of Peace. How will this impact broader power competition, particularly from Russia and China, their strategic interests in Iran, and even elsewhere, in the Arctic?
Well, I think that the geopolitical and geostrategic competition is at its peak at this moment. There's no doubt. But President Trump has also invited on this so-called Board of Peace the Russian president as well as the Chinese president. I understand that the Chinese have already declined because they think that this Board of Peace is going to replace the role that the United Nations should be playing it. So at the moment, they are not looking to join this. But the Russians have clearly said that for the Palestinians, the Palestinian cause, they are even willing to give $1 billion out of the frozen assets. That was a
Right.
smart move on their
Yes.
part because that clearly stakes the claim, and President Trump
Right.
has said, yes, they can use it. So, and they're even willing to give more out of that. So, which
Indeed.
is something that I think that's a sort of a political victory for them. And today, as you know, discussions are going on in the UAE, and Steve Witkoff and others have met Jared Kushner, President Trump, President Putin. So I think
Right.
that on that front, there is some move that is taking place. But Iranians at the moment are definitely cornered, but they are at this juncture supported by the Arab countries, mostly the Gulf also.
Okay, fair enough. But do you see a change in the U.S. Posture in a sense that because they are tying military assets or military presence to human rights issues in Iran, particularly now? Is this something new for the Middle East? And what implications could it have for future negotiations on, let's say, other security issues, nuclear issues as well?
Well, I think that the essentially the Americans have been wanting that the Iranians agree to the deal that they desire, not the Iranians, but the Americans desire. That means there should be no nuclear weapon possibility, there should be no enrichment, that there should be no missile program, or missiles also should be limited, as well as there should be no support to any of the proxies. Now, so remit of the so-called Joint Comprehensive Partnership, which they had signed JCPOA in 2015, and which was junked by President Trump, has essentially been expanded to include other dimensions, which are not acceptable to the
Right.
Iranians. But under pressure, the President Trump feels that they are going to come, and of course, we saw
Okay.
that the Iranians have shown inclination to engage in dialogue, but they have their own red lines, I guess.
So, a final question, Ambassador Trigunayat. There was always the concern whether Iran had a nuclear weapon or whether it's hiding a nuclear weapon. I mean, this is probably the time for it to state the case.
Well, I think that there is no doubt that Iran has the capacity to make the nuclear weapon, and because they have been doing tremendous research, and I have seen some of them being trained here and there, and for the last 20-25 years, and they have a very big group of people who have been involved in this. So there is no doubt. But at the moment, the enrichment capacities, because of the uh, deal being broken up, I think that they have achieved a very good level of sophistication in being able to produce. Some say within 2 weeks they can do it, and therefore there is some kind of rumor that the Iran might already be possessing the weapon. So
Right.
it's something that that needs to be seen in the context of the war. If it breaks out, and if Iran is forced to the wall, I think that they might come back.
Okay, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Anil Kumar Trigunayat.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your perspective.